says all of these things, that people that praise the oppression of oppressors. And there's a lot of people that do this. They'll say, they'll go to the ruler. In fact, one of them asked Anas ibn Malik he said, ندخل على الحكام ونقول أشياء ثم نخرج ونقول بخلافه. We go into the rulers and we say things, but then when we come out, we say the opposite. And Anas said, كنا نعده من النفاق. We used to consider that hypocrisy at the time of the Sahaba. So going into the ruler, طال عمرك, ما شاء الله عليك, شعب راضي, ما شاء الله عظيم, تاريخ سيذكرك, And this is the thing that, and they wanted, they loved to hear those things, telling them how wonderful they are. So it's not good to go in and just start dissing them either. I mean, that's not a wise thing to do. But to give them nasiha that's the role of the ulama. Tradition is to go in, and you should do it by, there's a beautiful story of Yusuf ibn Abd Salam, when he was with one of the rulers who was wearing silk. And he asked him, how much was that? How much did you pay for that? And he said, so much. He said, I noticed your servants had the same silk. He said, yes. And he said, I think it would be better to distinguish yourself from the servants. There's a really nice fine cotton that's more expensive than that. And then he said, and then also you'll get out of the prohibition of see, he didn't come in and say, haram, la yajuz, anta fasiq. He said it in a way where the guy could actually hear what he had to say. So he didn't, and that's a hikmah in that, I mean, people forget the wisdom, and the ulama had great wisdom. Ibn Taymiyyah passed by some Tartar. They weren't Muslim. When they were ruling, they had taken over. And he lived under them for a period. And they were drinking. And he was with, Ibn Qayyim mentions this in I'lam al-Muwaqqi'in. And he was with them, and he didn't say anything to them. And one of the, why don't you make inkar of this munkar? And he said, the reason Allah prohibited alcohol is because yasuddu an dhikrillah. It prevents people from remembering Allah. He said here, it's preventing them from going out and killing Muslims and stealing their babies. He said, so just leave them to their drinking. This is a hikmah, is a wisdom. That, and another time, same situation, he saw some Muslims playing chess. And he said to them, somebody said to him, isn't this munkar? And he said, it's better they do that than that they backbite. So just leave them doing that. And this is a recognition of the maqamats. And there's one of the most beautiful books that I've ever read in my entire reading. It's limited, but what I've read in the Islamic tradition, one of the most beautiful books I've ever read is Sanan al-Muhtadin by Sidi al-Mubaqir Abdali, and great Andalusian scholar. He died the year that Granada fell. He was the Qadi of Granada, and a beautiful man. And in fact, it's mentioned one of his miracles, because we talked about the karamat the other day. One of his miracles was when Granada fell, the representative of Isabella wanted to see the Muslim scholars. And he asked who was their greatest scholar. And they said it was Sidi al-Mawaq. And he asked, so they went to Sidi al-Mawaq. And remember that the Muslims, when they surrendered with 80 stipulations. This was not an unconditional surrender. They put many stipulations that were later, the Pope gave them a dispensation that because they were infidels, they didn't have to honor their oath with them. So they got a papal dispensation to renege on their treaty with the Muslims. But their mosques were to be protected, their schools were to be protected, their scholars were to be protected. So they stipulated all these things, Bu Abdillah, when they surrendered the city. So Sidi al-Mawaq, they went to him and they asked me, he said, I'm not going to go. And they said, no, you have to come, and this is a bad situation for the Muslims, and he's demanding that you come. And so he went. And he went in, and this is mentioned in Dibaj al-Mudahab about Sidi al-Mawaq. He went in and he took the hand of the minister and he kissed it, Sidi al-Mawaq. And this really upset the other ulama. They were really angry, because like humiliation. And then they talked, and then he left. And after that, in front of them, the hand of this man started swelling up and turning black. And he said, make that man come back. And then Sidi al-Mulaq came back, and he took his hand, and the swelling went down. And he was showing him, he was letting him know. But he wrote this book, Sanan al-Muhtadin, Sanan is the road. And in this book, he said that Amr bin Ma'ruf and Nahi an al-Munkar is specific to the individual. It's not specific to the ruling. And he wrote an entire book to explain that Muslims are categorized into 3 categories with Amr bin Ma'ruf and Nahi an al-Munkar. The first is ظَالِمٌ لِنَفْسِهِ. And he said these are people that Allah astafahum. Allah loves them, but they're people that are in disobedience. And then there's muqtasidun, the people in the middle. And then there's the sabiqun bil khairat. So these are the 3 categories. And in each category, he gives 3 degrees, depending on the level of their station. And so altogether, it's 9 degrees. He called it tadanni wa taraqi, going down and coming up, elevation. At the lowest are the people that are in gross disobedience to Allah. He said if they're drinking alcohol, get them to learn a musical instrument. Because he said there's a relationship between the tarab of alcohol, like this thing that people feel when they are drinking, and music. And so at least you put them into a khilaf position. Because the khamar is muharram bil ijma'. He said, but if you get them to play the oud or something like that, at least there's weak opinions that say that that's okay. And so it will help them get out of their drug addiction by doing something that will... This is hikmah of the Muslims. And then he goes, and he shows each one how you speak to them. And so this is very important aspect of our deen, is knowing how to do this. So anyway, this was about praising rulers. There's another famous, one of the great Maliki Qadis of Baghdad, and this is mentioned also in Dibaj al-Mudhahab, that Ibn Farahun wrote a book of the Tabaqat of the Malikis, and Ahmed Baba Timbukti did he added to them after Ibn Farahun's time. But one of the great Qadis, a Maliki Qadi of Baghdad, there was a Christian minister, and when he came in, he was a Christian minister under the Abbasids. When he came into his majlis to visit, there were all these ulama. The Muslim scholar got up and stood up for him and went and greeted him and honored him. And some of the ulama were upset because the Muslims living in a time, they had the power, and they're like, why are you getting up and honoring him? But he said, no, this is fiqh. He said, this is a man who's in charge of the affairs of the Muslims.